On a cold morning in Central California, the routine inside Ridgeway Juvenile Detention Center played out as always, clanging gates, head counts, and the low hum of restless energy. For most of the young men inside, life had been a series of locked doors and missed chances. They came from neighborhoods just like the ones Snoop Dogg grew up in. But inside these walls, hope was in short supply. News spread quickly through the facility that a special visitor was coming. Some staff were skeptical, others were excited. But for the teens, many with no family visits, few letters, and even fewer opportunities, it was a rare event to look forward to. Rumors flew. Was it a politician, a judge, or another motivational speaker they'd barely remember? It wasn't until the cell doors opened and the familiar voice echoed down the hallway that everyone realized the rumors were true. Snoop Dogg, legendary rapper and advocate, walked into the common area flanked by a small team. He wore his trademark shades, but his expression was gentle, curious, and determined. The warden welcomed Snoop and explained the schedule, but Snoop shook his head. "Let's hear from the real ones, the youth. That's why I'm here." The staff stepped back, surprised, as Snoop sat down at a table and invited the young men to join him. One by one, the boys gathered around, some wary, others hopeful. Snoop broke the ice, telling stories about his own mistakes and the friends he'd lost along the way. Laughter broke out as he mimicked teachers and coaches from his childhood, but the mood shifted when he spoke about the cost of poor choices and the challenge of breaking cycles. He asked for their stories, promising no judgment. At first, there was hesitation. A lifetime of being ignored or blamed doesn't fade easily. But slowly, voices emerged. Marcus, 17, spoke about his little brother, how he'd tried to protect him from the streets but failed. Jay, 16, talked about growing up without a dad and how anger became his closest friend. Snoop listened intently, nodding, sometimes offering a fist bump or a word of encouragement. He never interrupted, never talked down. Instead, he shared how music became his own escape, how words, beats, and rhymes gave him a way out when the world closed in. One boy, quiet until then, pulled a crumpled notebook from his pocket and rapped a verse he'd written about missing his mom. The group fell silent as the words hit home, even Snoop wiping a tear from beneath his glasses. After hours of conversation, Snoop gathered the group and made a promise. "Your stories matter, homies. You got something to say, and I want the world to hear it." The energy in the room changed, cautious hope, disbelief, and a spark that hadn't been there before. Snoop's team took notes, recorded ideas, and handed out journals and pens. As he left, Snoop promised to be back soon. "This ain't just for the cameras. We gon' build something together." That night, the boys traded stories in hushed voices, wondering if maybe, for once, someone really would keep their word. Snoop returned to Ridgeway a week later, this time with boxes of recording, equipment, blank notebooks, and a team of music producers. He explained the plan. "We're starting a project. Y'all write, y'all record, y'all own your stories. I'll be your mentor, but the world needs to hear what's inside these walls." At first, skepticism filled the air. So many promises had been broken before. But Snoop's presence and his genuine interest made it hard to dismiss. Slowly, the boys began writing lyrics, drawing album covers, and sharing ideas. Workshops formed, songwriting in the mornings, beat-making in the afternoons, and open mic sessions at night. Even the most withdrawn youth began scribbling in their notebooks, eager to be part of something creative. The staff saw new energy, fewer fights, more cooperation, and an unexpected sense of purpose. Snoop spent time with each group, sharing advice, laughing at corny rhymes, and gently pushing for honesty in their lyrics. "It's gotta be real," he'd say. "The world got enough fake." Marcus wrote about missing home, about the regret that kept him awake. Jay crafted verses about anger, forgiveness, and hope. The quiet boy with the notebook, his name was Isaiah, wrote an entire song about longing for a second chance. Producers mixed beats on donated laptops, using whatever sounds they could capture. Clapping, hands banging on tables, even voices humming in unison. The first time the boys heard their own words coming through speakers, the room erupted in shouts and cheers. As the project grew, word got out. Local newspapers visited to document the sessions. Families of the young men sent letters of pride and encouragement, some for the first time in years. Even the toughest guards admitted the program was making a difference. Snoop arranged for special guests, poets, musicians, and former inmates, who spoke about rebuilding lives after mistakes. Each visitor reinforced Snoop's message. You're more than your worst decision. Your story's still being written. By the end of the month, the young men had enough tracks for a mixtape. Snoop's label agreed to help distribute it, promising that all proceeds would fund scholarships and re-entry support for youth leaving Ridgeway. Before the mixtape's release, Snoop gathered everyone in the common room. Y'all did this. This is your voice, your pain, your hope, your dreams. Never forget, what you got inside can change the world. It was the first time many of the boys felt truly proud of something they'd made. For a moment, the walls didn't feel quite so high. The mixtape, titled Behind These Bars, hit streaming platforms and local radio. The response was overwhelming. Listeners from across the country sent messages, praising the raw honesty and talent of the young artists. Media outlets covered the story, not as a tragedy, but as a movement for change. Donations poured in, funding the expansion of music and art programs at Ridgeway and other facilities statewide. Other prisons reached out, hoping to replicate the model. For the first time, the young men at Ridgeway felt their voices echo far beyond their confined world. Snoop organized a listening party inside the prison, inviting staff, family members, and even local officials. The young men performed their songs live, nerves giving way to pride as the crowd cheered and some parents wept openly. Marcus's mother, who hadn't visited in months, hugged him tight after hearing his track. Jay received a letter from his younger brother, promising to stay out of trouble and wait for his return. Isaiah's mom sent a drawing, her way of saying she was listening too. The success of Behind These Bars caught the attention of advocates for criminal justice reform. They praised Snoop's project for focusing on healing, creativity, and hope, not just punishment. Snoop gave interviews, emphasizing that real change comes from giving young people a voice and a chance. The staff at Ridgeway reported lower rates of violence and improved behavior. Young men who once kept to themselves now mentored new arrivals, helping them find their own voice through art and music. Snoop didn't stop there. He helped establish a fund for post-release support, job training, therapy, and scholarships, so that every participant had a path forward when they re-entered society. Marcus was released a few months later. With Snoop's help, he got an internship at a music studio, continuing to write and record. Jay finished his GED in prison and began corresponding with a mentor who encouraged him to pursue teaching. Isaiah was paroled early and started working with at-risk youth, teaching them how to write lyrics as a way to cope with pain and find hope. He credited Snoop and the project for helping him see beyond the walls, both literal and invisible. The ripple effect was clear. The mixtape became more than music. It became a symbol of possibility, proof that change can start in the most unlikely places. A year later, the project Snoop started had become a national model. Behind These Bars was now a foundation, operating in youth detention centers across the country. Dozens of young people who might have been lost to the system were now finding hope and purpose through music, writing, and mentorship. Snoop continued to visit, never forgetting the faces and stories he'd heard. He spoke at national conferences about the power of second chances and the need for reform. Lawmakers invited him to testify about youth incarceration, and his words carried weight. The original Ridgeway mixtape won community awards and was even featured at education conferences. Its proceeds helped dozens of young men transition back into society, providing everything from college application fees to rent for a first apartment. Marcus released his own album, dedicating it to his brothers behind the wall. Jay became a mentor at Ridgeway, returning each week to teach creative writing. Isaiah, now in college, ran workshops for at-risk youth and shared his story at rallies and schools. The staff at Ridgeway marveled at the transformation, not just in the boys, but in the culture of the facility. Guards and teachers now saw themselves as part of a team working for change, not just enforcement. Snoop's revolutionary project drew attention far and wide, inspiring celebrities, musicians, and activists to get involved. Grants and donations flowed in, expanding programs into art, theater, and sports. But the greatest impact was felt in small, daily victories. A young man choosing to write instead of fight, a parent rekindling hope for their child, a former inmate returning to encourage others. Snoop's final message to every participant was simple: your story's not over. Use your voice. Build your life. The world's listening now. And in detention centers and neighborhoods across the nation, young people picked up pens, microphones, and brushes, telling their stories, healing their pain, and proving that change is always possible no matter where you start.